Hello, everyone. This is CD, and welcome back to Failed Obedience, a Work Revolt podcast. As always, I have Chaerb by my side, and maybe as always, LucentBeam's joining us again. So, hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
This week we are doing gaming memories. We're going to talk about memories going all the way back to our earliest days up to, I guess, our most recent memories. So it's kind of play this fast and loose, see where we go, and maybe you guys can get some enjoyment out of it. So we'll start off with this simple question. We'll combine two questions because they might be the same thing. What is your first gaming memory, and what is your first game? Whoever wants to
You want to
start.
go first, LucentBeam?
Donkey? Some donkey game on like a very old computer, and I want to say there was like also something in the program that played like the blue Danube, or I don't know how you say it, Danube, whatever. It's something about that also, and also a donkey, like where you had to move the donkey cart or something out of the way. It's like very, very old, before Windows, so like something on DOS. So like PC gaming, that's that would be my first gaming memory, is playing that donkey game in excessive amount.
Now, was that your first actually game that was you owned, or was it played somewhere else?
It was
Like,
at our house. Yeah, so my dad worked with like computers, and so he would always bring home, when they would replace them in the office, he'd bring home like the second most recent model, and so that was a highly advanced game. Donkey. Yeah, Donkey.
it's Donkey now. We'll make a Wikipedia about
I
it.
really honestly think it's called PC. I think it's a DOS game called literally Donkey. Donkey.bas, also known by Donkey, a computer game written in 1981 with an early version of PC DOS operating system. But I wasn't alive in 1981. So shortly after that, at some point, Donkey came home to our household. An extremely simple driving game in which the player controls a car but cannot steer, accelerate, or brake, only changing lanes to avoid a series of donkeys. There is no other goal other than to avoid donkeys. All right, so that's what's up.
You know,
That's excellent.
here's the thing: we're all gonna kind of date ourselves here.
Dang, yeah, I guess so.
But that's good. I never knew Donkey existed. So,
It exists.
all right. How about you, Cherub?
Yeah. So for me, it's maybe a mixture for the kind of first things I can remember. It was either going over to my grandmother's house on my mom's side, and my mom's family's got 10 kids, so there's a big age gap. So my youngest uncle is not all that much older than I am. And they had the latest in gaming technology, which I think was either an Intellivision or a ColecoVision. So again, dating ourselves a little bit. But for people who are unfamiliar, like the controller is not like a gamepad like we would expect today. It would basically look like a telephone, and you would slide like a plastic card over the telephone buttons that would have the controls. So if it was like some kind of an adventure game, like you had to go and find the dragon or whatever, and you'd slide the card in, and it would kind of have different buttons. Like I'm like, I have no idea what the dragon button does, but let me try pressing it. So it was either that, or my mom was a waitress, and they had a Miss Pac-Man cocktail cabinet. So instead of the kind of stand-up, it was the one that was like a little table and it was kind of off to the side. One of those two it's kind of in that same area. So either kind of early arcade or kind of early home consoles and Intellivision. First game I remember having like at home was on the Atari 2600. And it was either Centipede or Mega Mania, which is, Mega Mania is basically like Space Invaders, but like slightly different layout. But I mean, everything was kind of Space Invaders or Pong or similar around that time. How about yourself, CD?
Well, I'm gonna date myself here too. With my first game, when I was a kid was Metal Gear Solid 4. No,
Are you are
I'm
you
just
are you
no, no,
15?
no.
Katie has been secretly 15 all along.
I know.
Hmm.
No, it was actually so. This is how it's weird, right? I guess so. As I got older, I'm very aware when consoles come out and when games come out, and like buy them when they first release and stuff like that. But when I was a kid, I didn't know any of that kind of stuff. Um, my first game was uh, given to me by my grandmother. I thought like they gave me like underwear, and I was like disappointed. Um, but then later they came out for my birthday and gave me Legend of Zelda. Now the thing is, once again, I would have been too young to play Zelda when it came out because I was born in '86. So this was years afterwards. Also because at my house we didn't have like once again a weird thing. Um, I was first introduced to games at my grandmother's house with an NES, where my grandparents would play each other in Dr. Mario and Tetris all the time. And which was always funny is my grandfather would always be like, "Let's play Dr. Mario," and he would get angry by getting beat until he finally won one match, and then he'd be like, "All right, we can quit now," and that's how he'd play every time. So, my first experience was my grandparents having that, but at home we had a Sega Genesis, and we didn't have an NES first. So it was like I didn't understand that these were like coming out later, and like we had like a library of like 100 Genesis games because my parents would play them back then, and like I had that first, and then we got NES, and then I got Legend of Zelda. But what is weird is that I don't even remember playing that Legend of Zelda game, getting it. I remember getting it and being like, "Oh, this is awesome." But the first NES game I remember playing is like when we went to a movie rental store near us, and I rented out Super Mario Brothers 3, and like that's the first NES game I remember actually playing at my house, which was so my whole childhood of gaming is like completely screwed up because didn't know when I got something first or when things came out.
Were you just secretly influenced by the wizard, and that was why you needed Super Mario Brothers 3 first?
I didn't even know about that. Look, when I was young, I only had 4 television channels.
This is-
They didn't have advertisements for that.
you didn't get Nintendo Power?
I didn't get Nintendo Power till the Nintendo 64 came out. And that was a long time. Like I said, I didn't understand how gaming releases things worked back then. Like that was just it was just like, oh my god, there's a game.
You didn't go on Reddit and read about it first?
I know, and then complain about it. Those games broke.
All
Stop.
right, so now we know how old everyone is.
Yes. I mean, we had that, but those might be your first memories. But like, what really stuck out to you as a kid? Like, what game or moment in a game really stuck out to you?
Barney Stein. So my dad obviously like had us as like little very tiny tot PC gaming, and we had Wolfenstein, and he downloaded a mod where instead of there being Nazis, there were Barney. So you just killed Barney, which maybe that shouldn't let your children do that. But also we had 2 different computers in the computer room, and when we got Doom, we had a LAN hooked up so you could play against each other, but only one of them could run it correctly. So that person obviously won. And the other person got like 1 frame every 15 minutes and could kind of tell what was going on and maybe kind of shoot or maybe kind of walk. So that was like the beginning of multiplayer unfair gaming because, hey, at some point it's going to be your turn on the slow machine and you just have to, accept this unfair match. Yeah.
There you go. What about you, Cherub?
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, they're both kind of right around the Nintendo era. I remember being like, I'm older than CD, as you might have guessed from me
Well,
bringing up and out of the drudges of history, the Intellivision.
no, here's the thing though. I had an Atari too. I don't know when in the lifespan we got it. Like it was somewhere between the Genesis,
2006.
like exactly. It was between getting the Genesis and getting the NES, and we got an Atari because I remember playing Pitfall, and there was some other game that I like. It was like Cops and Robbers. I
You're
was
not
like,
you're not con- you're not confusing it like with those like new mini Ataris. Like you just got an Atari last week, and you're like, I just like no, Chaerb, I've got an Atari. It's right here.
yeah, I've got
It's
an
3 inches
NES.
long.
I've got an NES and a Super NES sitting right here. I mean, I just got these things. But no, like I remember playing Pitfall, and it was like mall. It was a cops and robbers game, and it was like you were in a mall. And it was like I can't remember what it was called, but it was 3 levels, and one person was like the police officer, and another was like the thief, and you were trying to chase the person down. But once
Oh,
again,
like Keystone Capers.
that's it. You got the name. There you go. Keystone Capers. Uh,
Uh,
but
yeah, so kind of like around the Nintendo era, I remember kind of two instances. One was like I really remember I got the original Zelda for Christmas, and at that point I think we'd gotten the Nintendo somewhat recently, so it was like we had Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt, and that was it. Like, so getting the first Zelda was just kind of a like completely different style of game, uh, and kind of approaching that. And I remember being really excited for two things. One was the Zelda 2, and the other was Super Mario Brothers 2. Zelda 2, I went and maybe it was my birthday, maybe it was some event where I was going to get a game. And we went to like the local game stores. There's a tiny hole in the wall, you know, in a like really crappy, crappy strip mall. We went there, and the guy who was working like just totally convinced my parents that I was like way too young to be playing Zelda 2, this pinnacle of gaming. That it was. And
Violence.
yeah, violence. I forget what I got instead, but I remember just like to this day I still remember that amount of like regret that immediately happened when I took home whatever clearly inferior game that wasn't called Zelda uh instead. And then the second was like when Super Mario Brothers 2 came out, it was actually kind of hard to get. I forget if there was like a chip shortage at the time, or if it was that they just staggered the shipments, because there just wasn't as it wasn't quite the same as today, where it's like it's Tuesday, it's new game day.
I can actually help you
Uh,
here. It was a chip shortage because
yeah,
I watched a video about it recently about how uh, they used it in between while they were waiting for Super Mario Brothers 3 and they didn't want to release the lost levels, but there was a chip shortage getting Super Mario Brothers 2 out over here. Like it was just an industry wide thing going on at the time.
yeah, and so it was like I couldn't like my parents couldn't actually get the game at that point, but like I was lucky enough to rent the game at the local video rental store, a little tiny mom and pop shop. And uh I like was so excited, like, but I was at school. It was like during the school year, and so I like, brought the instruction book to school just to like show my friends. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a new Mario, and like kind of the excitement of just like saying like this is a kind of a little unicorn. Like you're not supposed to be able to have it, and like I have to go through school and then I can go and play this thing, which I have for a day. But was just kind of really excited for that. I mean, it's not. I'm not sure what if you wanted to kind of have a game specific thing, but like those things were both pretty visceral to me as kind of a young person just kind of learning gaming as a hobby.
Even the comment about instruction manuals. So my mom was very strict about time on the boob tube, as she would call it. So we were like very when we did finally get a console. We our first console was a Sega Genesis, and it was like, extremely limited time. Like definitely not during the school week. And so the rest of the time, what are you gonna do? You know, pine away reading the the game manual front to back. Yeah, like what am I gonna do for fun? I guess read the manual because I'm not allowed to play games right now.
Did you have Michael Jackson's Moonwalker?
No, I did not.
I had that.
I Yeah, I had that too. So speaking of things that CD had, what's yours? What's your kind of
I mean,
uh thing you would highlight?
I think the thing that first struck me is when playing games is like I mean I wasn't used to seeing something like Super Mario Brothers, the first game, like at all. Like it was just something so new and unique to me, even though I'd I watched, like I said, I watched my grandparents play Tetris and stuff. I was like, but that was just like a simple puzzle game. But I didn't realize they had Super Mario Brothers at their house. Then my uncle played it one day, and he like showed me how to. He like showed how to get to the minus world and stuff. And I was like, this is crazy. And I was like, there's so much to this game and secrets to be found. I was like, this is like I just thought that was awesome to me. Um, Mine's not that my big, but like that was just seeing like something so colorful and something
Yeah, I
you
mean
can
it was
just run through and have fun. It was
yeah,
awesome. Like I said, that's something I still keep to this day. Like playing, like I love Mario games just because it's the first one that came out, or the first
yeah.
platform one that came out, not the other one.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, just like how much Nintendo was just. It felt like such a huge improvement over like the Atari, or if you had a computer at home, which I think was like probably not super common back around that time. It was just so fundamentally different, and whether it was the colors, whether it was the size of the sprites, it was yeah, it was pretty impressive for what that was.
Yeah. I mean, so we're all still in our formative years. Is there any other kind of memories that resonate with you from when you were young to this day?
I shared a room with my little sister, and then kind of by proxy, if you were allowed to have the console in your room, we're like, oh, you can have it for 3 days. Even by the time N64 came out, my mom was still that strict, like no consoles in your room until you're in college. So you'd get like a week when you got to have, oh, no TV in your room either. A week when you got to have like the portable, like little mini TV and the console. And so we would like share save files. So we shared a Paper Mario save file and like went start to finish with that. And we shared at some point Zelda Ocarina of Time save file. We did eventually, I think, go through and just play it ourselves. My link was named Mr. Happy in my own account, but her and I went through and we kind of like went through and had done everything together. And that was kind of fun because I feel now I'm more protective or selfish about my game playing. Like I wouldn't feel like I played an entire game if I physically only played half of it and then someone else had the controller for the other half. But it was very much a shared things felt more like a shared experience and especially on N64 like a lot of things we would try to beat through together and even if like oh hey I beat this while you were away it wasn't something like oh no why did you do that it was like oh cool well what's up next so I don't know I guess I our view of games was I was a more of a shared experience than it is now where you feel like ownership of your character your save file I know it's just different maybe that's being a little kid I don't know.
I mean, it kind of reminds me. You say like having the TV. I remember once again. Here's another anecdote of me not understanding or realizing when systems came out. At some point we got TurboGrafx 16. I don't know when, but we had it, and the reason that reminded me of it is because you're talking about like having a TV in your room. And I remembered, um, I had like this 10-inch television that I finally got, and I like put it in my room on top of my like dresser. And I was like, the only thing I could like get that wasn't hooked up was the TurboGrafx. So I hooked it up to my TV, like played those games. And I was playing like Bonk and Tricky Kick and JJ and Jeff, Legendary Axe on those like little sliding cards. Like like and like I said, once again, I don't know when we got that. I don't know exactly where it fits in between us getting Genesis and NES and stuff like that. Um, but there we are. And speaking on the shared experiences, it was sort of like that when I was younger too. It carried from when I was younger until I was in college, I guess. But when I was younger, my sister would actually play games too. Um, and she'd play like when we had the Genesis, we played Toe Jam and Earl together.
Yes, Toe Jam and Earl.
Yep. So we played that. We never beat it. I
It's
saw
so difficult.
it
I mean,
is.
especially if you get up so high and then something goes horribly wrong and then you fall and 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 you're like, well, my life is sad now and I'm
Yep.
turning off the console.
Yep. And the thing is, the new one's just like that.
Ah, Panic on Funkatron was a good one because it had some really good like NPCs that played good music or like you interacted with musically. Oh yeah, because I like music. We've talked about that before. But Panic
Yes.
on Funkatron had some funky music that was really enjoyable.
I like their little conversations every time you got into the elevator and went up. And they'd
Yeah.
say stupid things. But yeah, I mean, before we get to you, Cherub, um, like you said, you had a Genesis. Listen, what do you have any other kind of memories relating back to that? Because you kind of skipped through the Genesis years and went to the N64
We
after.
played a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog. We started on 2 and then went back to 1, and then we're ready when 3 came out. And then when you could attach 3 into Knuckles, it was like the biggest deal because then it was like a save file. So we were very, very much into Sonic. But another game we really liked was, oh man, there were so many actually. James Pond. I don't know if you ever played
Jane,
James Pond.
yes, I
James
played
Pond
that.
Yes.
2. It was like a weird Christmas game. Just
Yep.
why? That doesn't even make sense. Or James Pond and the aquatic games. We were like very much into that. And the Indiana Jones game, which is extremely challenging. And we used to like to play around in the sound test because the what are they? Stalagmites falling down would like make a squelching noise. It sounded like farts. And so we'd turn up the TV and play it like really, really loudly to annoy my mom. Or the sound file that said, you chose poorly. And we would just have it like screaming, you chose poorly. So, and we made our own fun too. But yeah, those couple, we were definitely
Well,
super into. And just random things you rented from Blockbuster. Like renting games was a big deal because your parents weren't going to buy you games. Oh, Quackshot. I loved Quackshot. I got
Quackshot
that
was
for being in the
amazing.
hospital. That was my sorry you were in the hospital game. And I was like, yay, I guess I'm glad.
No, that was an awesome game. Like I remember that to this day, playing that through. Um, it was like I said, what was weird is that I didn't understand how I got all these other systems. But like I said, my parents had they played Genesis a lot, or more than they didn't play anything afterwards. But they had like about 100 games we had of that system. But we had a lot of bad games. Like Fatal Rewind was awful. I still don't even know how to play that game. Like, if you look it up, um, Techno Cop. Techno Cop was funny, is because when you shot somebody in that game and killed them, they just exploded on the ground, and all that'd be there would be 4 limbs and a head and just blood, like pixelated blood through the whole thing. Like it didn't make sense. Like you're shooting them with a regular pistol and then they just explode. But it was kind of like, okay, it's like that probably wasn't something I should be playing. Um, Road Rash was fun.
Yes, actually Road Rash 2
Yeah,
is better than the first one.
I like. It was always fun kicking people off their bikes or hitting them with a stick. But I played that a lot. I mean, like I mentioned before, Dick Tracy was fun. Quackshot was great. I honestly didn't ever. I never played Sonic and Knuckles. I don't think I played Sonic 2. We had Sonic 1, but I never went back to it. Um, but like I said, oh, Awesome Possum. I don't know if you ever remember that game.
I don't think I ever played that one.
It was Awesome Possum, kickstart their machino's butt. Then he'd come out and go, "I'm awesome," and it was an environmentally friendly game. After each level, they would give you a quiz about the environment, and you would have to try to get the answer right. Not even kidding.
If you got it right, did it tell you were awesome?
No, it was weird. It was like a sitting, like it'd be like animals like up and like it was like a senate kind of looking thing, and the animals would all be like sitting up there, and you'd be like the possum like standing and down below, and they all be looking down at you asking these questions. Um, Decap Attack was another one I played. I mean, there was a lot of great games. I didn't have. It was funny enough. It was like I didn't have any like the good, like the memorable games like Kid Chameleon or Comic Zone.
Yeah, me neither.
I did have was it Alex Kidd. I enjoyed Alex Kidd. I liked playing rock paper scissors in the game. That was the most fun I had, and I was like, "This is fun." I like playing rock paper scissors. Um, but yeah, that was kind of my Genesis experience. And sorry I took so long. So, but let's get over to Cherub. Did you have any kind of experiences? I don't know if you had Genesis or if you had Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I had. We started off with Super Nintendo was what we had first with Super Mario World. Then we eventually got a Genesis. We did not have the abundance of games that CD describes. Those systems were bought explicitly for my brother and I, and so we were pretty thoroughly on the kind of Christmas and birthday plan. So you got your a game at your birthday and a game at Christmas, and so that's what had to last you. And what I always kind of remember is in the kind of Super Nintendo era was when what was then called Final Fantasy III for American audiences, but Final Fantasy VI if you account for all of the releases
Yep.
came out, and it was a released I think in maybe like September or October, kind of leading into the Christmas year. It was like the only thing I wanted, so it was the only thing on my Christmas list. Um, and like I saw it under the Christmas tree, and so like I totally one night like got like super late, went and down there and like got like a knife out of the kitchen and like cut the tape right along. And I opened up just the side of the box and I took out the little white container, got the cartridge, took just the cartridge out, and then put like Super Mario World or Pilot Wings inside of it, just so it felt the same weight. It was like this weird Indiana Jones shuffle the weight off of the idol type of moment. And then like very carefully taped it back up because I just like couldn't wait. Like I needed to play that Final Fantasy game, and I played a boatload of that game. Just a ton. Like I really kind of focused more on that kind of Super Nintendo, especially in the Final Fantasy, Secret of Evermore, Illusion of Gaia, kind of all that, like what would have just been called Square at the time software. I really got into those quite a bit. What was interesting is like I used my Genesis almost kind of exclusively for Sonic early on, but then later when they did Triple Play Baseball, and it had kind of like a three-quarters view that was kind of unique at the time. Like either you had like RBI baseball where it felt like they really wanted you shoved right in on the player, King Griffey Jr. baseball where they want you shoved right in on the player. But this let you have a view that you could have that view, but you could also have one that was kind of zoomed out.
Now,
And then you could play like as like the Legends team and just have like Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth absolutely murder the poor like lackluster like Cincinnati Reds.
now was this the baseball game that came in like a red box? Like it wasn't actually um a plastic one. Like it opened up like kind of like a gift box, like for a gift card.
Uh,
Because
no, I think it was a so it was published by Electronic Arts. So I think it had like that yellow, like it looked like a regular cartridge kind of, but it had like the like yellow holder. I think like
yeah,
I'm trying to remember in my head. I thought EA cartridges were slightly different than like a
they
normal
were
Genesis
because
cartridge.
I had a Madden and like it had the yellow and it was they're like a little bit taller.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So it looked like a Madden cart, but just was triple play baseball.
well, I had a baseball game. The only reason I remember it is because it had voice acting in it, and it'd be like, "Oh, and one, look out! At the plate is number 17, the shortstop," and that's how it
I
would
had
talk.
Oh my god, I had like around that time, around the kind of Super Nintendo era, I also got kind of our first computer that we had in the house. It was an early Windows machine. And the game it came with was like Sports Illustrated Video Baseball. And you would have like a pretty generic character sprite, and then like they would pitch the ball, and then you would hit it, and when you hit it, it would switch from like the graphics to like a generic like African guy running in the field who was super skinny, and it would be like that's supposed to be Kirby Puckett, and I'm like, no, Kirby Puckett, he can be fast, but he's not. It's not like looking at someone like Torrey Hunter, right? Like you're not going to mix the two up. I don't know what you guys are doing, but like everyone looked like it was clearly like one of the devs, right? And it's like, all right, get one of the devs out there in a baseball uniform. You sit at a computer all day. You're not really a professional athlete, but if you put this on and we run with you facing away from the camera, you're probably Herbie Puckett or Ken Griffey Jr.
I don't like you bringing in any of your twins bias into this conversation.
I'm sorry. Is there a Carolina-based baseball player that you would like to talk about instead?
No, we have to talk about the Braves. Okay.
We could talk about them. I mean, they lost in the World Series.
Yeah, and they lose. That whatever. Let's continue.
Next question.
Well, that you kind of remind me, like when you talk about the Super Nintendo, you kind of remind me of like you were like my cousin, right? Like my first introduction to the Super Nintendo. Once again, not understanding how games release. Let's get that. Like I said, once again, let's just establish that I didn't understand how video games were released until 1996.
I thought you were going to say last week. Like you just didn't understand the concept of how things release.
I didn't understand how games are made. I just thought they just happened. No, like it wasn't until 96 that I understood how systems were released and made and stuff like that. Like, because I was getting them at sporadic times at different times. So like the first time I saw a Super Nintendo was when I went to my cousin's house, and he was like you. He just had like Square games and just RPGs and other kind of stuff like that. And I'm like, this is terrible. Like, and I just didn't want one because that was just not my kind of game. And I'm just like he didn't even show me A Link to the Past. I didn't know that game existed forever. Because
like, I'm going back home and I'm playing Columns like a regular person.
Hey,
this Tetris garbage.
Columns are I had the Columns. That was one of the games I had. Off-brand Tetris. But so we'll kind of weave this into the next question. You kind of already answered it. You already said so. You're basically your first console you owned was a Super Nintendo, correct? Like that was yours.
Yeah, like there's kind of like an awkward stage where like the Nintendo was kind of ours, but that was also I think it was ours in the fact that my mom and my aunt who lived with us at the time like really liked just drinking a lot of wine until 5 a.m. and playing Super Mario Brothers and never getting past the first couple of levels. But man, they drank a lot of wine. That's like what I remember. But I think that was more for them and that particular ritual. Like Super Nintendo was really the one that was like that was because my brother and I both kind of went in and said, "Hey, this is what we really want." Is like a combined big deal kind of Christmas present.
Okay. Before we get to the next, continuing, Shining in the Darkness was a good game for Genesis. I didn't play that one, but I watched my mom beat it. Okay, so over to Lucent. So what you sound like you kind of already answered it, but what was actually your first console that you owned that would you say was yours?
Well, the Sega Genesis was not ours. We asked for it for Christmas, and my mom said, absolutely not. You girls are not going to have a video game machine. And so my dad bought it for himself. And so we would have to wink, wink, ask him if we could use his Genesis, which, I mean, a little farce. So technically, our first console, or mine, was N64, but I mean, it's actually Sega Genesis. But we just weren't allowed to say that, otherwise it wouldn't be allowed in our household.
Well, see, the reason I was bringing that up is because, like, when I said 1996 is when I understood how things are coming out, is because that's when I realized N64 was coming out, and that's what I asked for Christmas, and it's like my parents always ask us like, make a list of what you want for Christmas, and me as a child would not be reasonable. I would get the Toys R Us catalog.
You just circle it?
No, I wrote out what I wanted, but I made a list of 1 to 100.
My mom solved that by giving us like a pre-made Christmas list in which there was 3 slots, like 3 games, 3 American Girl doll things, 3 books, 3 whatever. So you could only ask for 3 of any kind, like 3 toys, 3 whatever, uh, to prevent us from, because we used to do that exact same thing, like write down every single thing we ever might possibly want ever. You're not getting any of that.
Yeah, I did it, and I like that was like I would do that more than my homework. Like I'm putting effort in this. Got to go through this toy book, get the things. I remember getting other stuff too. Like, what? Remember when you were younger? They had those like little heating machines where you like melt metal and turn it into like for the girls it would turn into jewelry, and for the boys it like turn
Oh
into
yeah.
like uh metal figurines. I don't know why that's bringing up, but I got that too. I was like, that was cool. I was like melting stuff. I was like, I'm making stuff. So no, you're not. But yeah. So mine was actually a Nintendo 64 because that was the first one I asked for, and all I knew was Super Mario 64. But they knew I would get under the tree like Cherub, so they didn't put an N64 under the tree. And they didn't put the games under the N60 under the tree. So, like, I woke up that morning and opened everything, and I didn't have one. And I was sad. And they're like, "Oh, here's one more present." And it was like, "Oh, it's N64." And I was like, "But it didn't have any games in it because the ones before, like, the NES came with a game. The other one came. Mario. I mean, Genesis had a Sonic." And I was like, "Well, I don't have any games." They like made me wait for like 3 hours, and they're like, "Oh, there's another present under the tree." I was like, "Oh my god, it's Super Mario," which they shouldn't have given me first because then I didn't care. But they kept putting more presents under the tree, and like, "Oh, there's another one," and I was like, but then I was like, "Oh, Killer Instinct, oh, Clay Fighter 63 and 1/3, all these games." But the thing is, like, I'm just gonna play Mario. But I remember vividly because back then we still had one of the TVs that was like in a wooden kind of display, I guess you'd say. Uh, I don't know how you would explain it now. It's like his own cabinet. Do you know what I mean? You have to know what I mean,
Oh,
Chad.
yeah, you're the like ones that had the TV with the built-in roller stand and the whole nine.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
like,
yeah, no, like those are the kind where you could actually like hear the vacuum tubes actually warming up.
yep,
You had the switch between UHF and VHF if you wanted to do that, and you had to connect the Nintendo using the adapter that had the 2 screws
yep.
that you would use so that you could actually hook up a coaxial cable to it. Yeah, I'm familiar with dinosaur technology.
Well, see,
CD.
that's what was confusing. Like, I got the Nintendo 64 and I took it out and it had the RGB or whatever plugs in it, and I'm like, where does this go? And like, they're like, call your cousin and ask his dad because he got one too. And he was like, his dad was like in the tech, like he was kind of like your dad, Lucent. He worked with computers and everything. We're like, well, he should know. And he was like explaining it to us, like, you got to put it in this. And we're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it was like, eventually it clicked. It's like, oh, I've got a VCR in my room that has these colors on it. So run and got a VCR out of my room and I then plugged it in through the VCR and then plugged the VCR into the TV. It's like, oh my god, I can play. And it was
Oh
like,
my god.
yeah, it was like my uncle was getting so frustrated with me. It's like you shouldn't be putting me on a phone. Like, you shouldn't be putting your kid on the phone with him in the first place to try to figure this out. This is dumb.
I tried plugging it into every speaker and none of it
It's like
works.
these don't fit. It's like that. It's not like the old ones. But yeah, that was my first actual system, and like I played it to death. Like I remember getting like even Super Mario 64's strategy guide, playing that all through. Like I was like, I gotta find all the stars, and like looking into the book. I think that's why my eyes have gone bad. Like I have to wear glasses now.
Stars in the strategy guide. We like to get like the little cheat code guides for Sega Genesis too, and that would be, talk about like, oh, how do you know what games are coming out? No, this is like, what games don't we own that are listed in this cheat guide or like mini strategy guide? Because it was like this super guide of, I don't even know what it was. It was like this big fat book just full of either like walkthroughs or secret codes for games, and so it'd be like, which one do we someday want? This one, and we already know how to beat it.
Oh, I remember having a game chart for the Genesis, and like you'd have that big code book, and you'd like look through all the games through that way, like, oh, look at all these cool codes you can put in. But that was kind of fun. But I mean, so this is all, I guess you'd say, our home console. And I'm gonna assume by all three of our love of the original Pokemon that we all had a Game Boy at some point. Did we?
My first Game Boy was a Game Boy Advance in college, so no, I missed the original Game Boy boat. My first Pokemon Red was played on an emulator on PC.
Oh no. Mine, I
We
got
weren't
it.
allowed to have Game Boy either.
I had my first was a Game Boy Pocket. It was a gold one too, and somebody stole it. I don't know to this day who stole it, but that's what I played. I played Pokemon Blue on, and once again, what I just found out is I loved playing as Venusaur or Bulbasaur, and that's the worst one, but I loved it. Bulbasaur and Articuno. That were my two Pokemon. I didn't need anybody else, so whatever.
Uh, yeah, no, I had the very original giant Game Boy with Tetris on it, and kind of used that. That was the when you're when my parents would either one put us in the back of the station wagon where you were in that weird back seat where you're like you faced away from everything, you just looked out the back window, or in the literal back of a truck, like just in the truck bed. That was the thing that kept us feeling warm and safe, I guess, was the original Game Boy for that. And I think that probably by the time that the kind of Pokemon Red and Blue came out, I don't think I played it on the original. I think I picked it up once. By the time I had whatever it was, a Christmas or a birthday that came around, it was by the time that Pokemon Yellow came out.
Okay.
So I kind of missed that very first one, but then kind of picked it up there, and kind of played that like it was kind of close. I think my younger brother, really got into it even more than I did. Like he really kind of took over, kind of playing Pokemon at that time, and still kind of leads the way in Pokemon worlds.
Okay. So we're gonna so we don't have this being extra long. We're gonna try to cut this into two episodes. So when we're younger and when we're a little bit older. But what we'll look at right now is like Chaerb already talked about it. You talked about it going to school and talking about the games and stuff. I mean, did this connect you in any way with other kids at your school when you were younger, Lucent?
No. Nope.
Nope.
So like I feel like yeah, we played. I don't know. I remember going over. There's a family around the block that had three boys that were similar ages to me and my sisters, and they would play. They had a Nintendo and then a Super Nintendo, and we had a Genesis. It'd be like we'd go over each other's houses to play like the other console, but no, definitely not at school. In fact, definitely not. Because fast forward all the way to high school, and there were like two boys in one of my classes talking about, I want to say it was talking about Majora's Mask, because that seems like it might have been when I was in high school. And I like, fine, okay, I did interrupt the conversation to like make a comment about it, but it's like, oh cool, they're playing Majora's Mask too. Like I thought that was cool, so I like said something to that, and they just like gave me a dirty look and ignored me. So it's like, oh, never mind, I'll never talk about video games ever again. So definitely not. I mean, other than like a sleepover at like my best friend's house, we play like the Lion King game, but no, there's definitely no video game bonding. Like, did not ever meet a friend because of a video game as a child. Like, and again, even I said like in high school, no, that didn't work. But as a littler person, like a little tiny person, no, if I didn't already know them or were already at their house doing something else, then no, sorry, games. In fact, my mom like much later lamented to us, what do you mean? Not every little girl played games that much. What? I had nerds. I was like, Mom, well, but not everyone had Doom hooked up as a LAN, like a LAN party, as like a 5-year-old. So yeah, Mom, You can blame dad for that. So the answer is a resounding no. No to video game friends.
I like it was kind of sort of I guess in middle school. Like that's when I had Nintendo Power. Then eventually, and like at our school, like you weren't allowed. You was like you're only allowed to read educational stuff, even if you're done with your work. But like I'd sneak them out and talk to people about it, and then I'd get in an argument like with this kid about which system was cooler. But then he went homeschool, so whatever.
Did you did you like force him into homeschooling because your rivalry was so strong?
That's right. I pushed him out. There's only one of us can survive. I had bad times with homeschool kids. I'm not gonna talk
We're,
about them.
yeah, we're not going to get into CD's special episode where he talks about his problem with other students and how he forced them into homeschool situations
Basically,
over video games. Reddit wasn't invented yet. That's what Reddit's for now. That's what Reddit.
exactly. I make people feel terrible about themselves now on the internet since I don't do it in real life. I don't get out enough to do it. I don't. They don't allow me to hang outside of middle schools anymore.
Wait, is that a restraining order thing or?
Maybe.
we're not we're not going to talk about that.
That's not.
Whether CD has a restraining order about middle schools is up to everyone's imagination
That's between me and God.
and the local police jurisdiction. Just those three people, though.
For the record, nothing ever happened. I was going to be a teacher and then I quit.
Was it over? Was that also because of a disagreement over video game consoles?
No, it's because I found out how bad the school districts were that I was at, and they made me super depressed.
Aw.
It was really bad. I was like, I can't do this. I'm sorry. Um, and my mom's like, "You're smart," because she's a teacher. So, um, so we're kind of at this point of where things have switched to 3D. We'll try to wrap it up here before we go into the next console generations, the PlayStation 2s and stuff like that, which I assume we're all kind of veering into uh, college area at this time, getting close to it. Some maybe
Mhm.
earlier than others. Um, but, I mean, did any of you have any kind of experience with the PlayStation back then? Or, God forbid,
No,
the Sega
that's for rich
Saturn?
people. Nope, rich people.
Or people who took all of the things they had gotten for their entire childhood, brought them to Funkoland, uh, dumped it all on the table, and said, "Could you please give me one copy of a PlayStation and one copy of probably Crash Bandicoot or, NFL game or something?" Because that's what smart people like I did. I didn't really want and now they're like my most treasured games and everything, and I'm sure I got nickels for my copies of like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy 2 and 3 and Illusion of Gaia, Secret of Evermore. Like I just dumped it all on there and said, "Give me one of them there PlayStations that I hear so much about."
Oh,
Uh
I did one worse than you. I went to a flea market with all my N64 games and traded them in for like nothing to a guy.
I
Aw.
I'll have a version of that, but maybe I was the smart one in it. I traded someone my TurboGrafx 16, and I think I just had Bonk for it, for a set of Score baseball cards. But it was like a complete set.
There you go.
I was like, I would really like that box of Score, complete set of Score baseball cards.
Um,
1996 is a good vintage, I bet.
I mean, my experience with the PlayStation 1 is once again going to my cousin's house, and he had one. He had a PlayStation 1, and he actually showed me games that were actually neat, unlike the Super Nintendo. Um, so I got to see Metal Gear Solid and stuff like that, and that was awesome to me. But I never owned a PlayStation 1. Uh, like I said, I had N64, and then I jumped to PlayStation 2 when eventually that came out. But uh, I mean, is there any kind of things you want to touch on from your youth before we wrap this half of the podcast up?
Not for me. I think we're right in that edge. Like you start getting to PlayStation 2, kind of late PlayStation, early PlayStation 2. Like I'm starting to get into like being a young adult. Like it switches
Say
from
like
that.
that.
Like
That was the end of like kiddie games, and now you're
yeah,
like, oh, now you're a real person. Oh, and you play games.
things start getting real because like I'm in college, CDs, and late elementary school. Um, he's like really just he's getting into that Metal Gear game. He knows he shouldn't. There's guns and stuff. So, uh,
Look, my time perception of all games is so skewed. I know I had a PlayStation 2 in high school. Uh,
no, but I think that this is probably a good place for us to kind of make a cut so that we don't have another 2 hour long extravaganza.
yeah.
Ooh.
So what we know is that Lucent was better than us because she was playing computer games when she was like a little kid.
Oh yeah, PC Master Race. Would you believe that's actually why later on I never wanted to play PC games because I viewed PC gaming as like what a little child does. Because I mean, I barely even touched on how serious of a little baby PC gamer we were. Because like I said, we weren't allowed to play console much, but we sort of had free reign over the computer if we could like lie and say we were drawing a picture in paint, well eventually when Windows came out, or like, oh but we're just typing a story, like no we're not.
My this is my experience of a home PC, which I'm air quoting to just be a douchebag. Um,
Oh, you don't need a double quotes to be a douchebag.
this is when my mother had gone back to school, and she was doing night school, and she needed to be able to type papers at home. So she had a brother uh, typing computer thing that was just a monitor and like a typewriter, and it printed out stuff. And it was like all orange and with a black screen, and it
It only
had Tetris on it.
I thought you were gonna say it ran only two things: a word processor and Doom.
It ran word processor and Tetris. um, I mean, like my PC stuff didn't start until high school, which is what we'll get into next time. Um, which is kind of a funny kind of time. I did play I played PC games at school because we had the Oregon Trail games and stuff like that, which still hold a place in my heart to this day. Like I even played them when we had typing class in high school, and then if you got done, you could like play Oregon Trail, and I'd put all my friends in, and then just go full speed with no food, and all my friends would just die. But I made it. I didn't die. That's not my problem. I didn't put my wannabe girlfriend on the thing. I knew she'd die.
Uh, that's we're learning a little bit more about CD with every week. Uh, so yeah, it's that's not my problem. CD philosophy on life.
So, if you could describe in one sentence, summing up your early kind of years, your formidable years, your childhood, your uh, young adolescence, your preteen years for gaming, what would you say?
Inherently connected to hanging out with my sisters.
There you go.
Yeah, like for me, it would have been like I don't know how you would say it, but I mean it was kind of a uh, it was kind of like my first connection. Like I was not a super early reader, and like we didn't have a lot of books, so it was kind of like a connection to storytelling, right? Like that was like where I started to see some of my first early stories. I mean, they may have been very simple, but like kind of that idea of like, hey, you're Link, and you are in a story where you have to do something. Like that was kind of it was a connection into that kind of storytelling, even though it was very simplistic. That I didn't have. That's like the world's longest sentence. So just keep on going. CD. Do you have a shorter sentence?
Lost in time. Because I didn't know when things were coming out or why I had them or what I was doing with them. But here's the funny thing is that, I had like, I was getting systems out of weird order, games and different times and all that stuff. But funny enough is that even when I was in high school, I started spending nights at my cousin's house because they moved closer. But the great thing was is that even though my cousin he had a PlayStation 1 and a Super Nintendo upstairs that was like his special thing or whatever. He even had a GameCube at one point. Downstairs, they still had the NES hooked up. So when everybody else went to sleep, we would stay up and play NES. Even in like my young teens, we'd play beach volleyball co-op where you could play as Billy and Jimmy from Dragon. I mean, what? I can't think of it. Uh, the beat 'em up.
Oh, River City Ransom.
No,
Uh,
it
Little
had
Dragon.
Double Dragon. That's it.
there we go. Yep.
Jimmy and Billy were in it. And you could play as them, and we'd play that all night. And like I said, that was even after all the consoles came out. I think what it really did is that I never had a really good connection with my sister. We played games a little bit when I was younger, but we never had a great connection. But it connected me with my cousins a lot more, playing games like that. And like I said, when we come back next time, we'll look further into our young adult years. That's when I started playing PC more. That's when I learned about StarCraft. When I tried to play Baldur's Gate until my parents said, no, you don't get a subscription fee for this. um, and things like that. And I'm sure for for both of you, if you want to give a preview of what your next adventure will be, you're welcome to say it.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's gonna be like that's around the time. I mean, you get to PlayStation 2, you start to get to like you move from games like Mario and Zelda, and that's when you start seeing things like Grand Theft Auto, and you start seeing like I mean, Grand Theft Auto was on PC, but like that's where I start to get more exposed to like like these games can be radically different than kind of what I was experienced like playing on Nintendo 64 or even PlayStation, where that was like you could find it, but it wasn't like this is the big thing. So kind of just really going beyond what I had been exposed to up until that point.
Do you have any lasting words for the people, LucentBeam, to tell them what to look forward to when we come back?
Lots of playing too much of the same game.
Which is carried over to this day.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you both for being here. Thank everybody for listening. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe. I don't usually say that, but I'm saying it this time. It'd really help us out. What we'll probably do is we'll put this first episode up this week, which is the week of the 20th, and we'll try to do the second week for next week if everybody can meet up. Then after that, we're gonna have Chaerb challenging my Super Mario Maker levels that I've made one specifically for him, which he is going to enjoy.
We did a very small test run so that CD could judge my level of skill, which is very low.
He is very bad at Mario games now. He is.
Yeah.
He's old now. Everybody.
I'm so old. I'm just
Dusty
84
old
years.
bones.
Yeah, no, I will do my best, and hopefully at least my agony will hopefully be somewhat entertaining.
And we've actually got a few things scheduled after that. We're gonna do another saving, killing your babies. This one's gonna be a little bit different since Zelda won the first episode. We're actually going to go through the Zelda franchise and kill off all the games to get to the best Zelda game. Um, we're also going to do a discussion on Disco Elysium in an episode. Um, I'm trying to reach out for some special guests for certain things that are above our pay grade, but maybe they'll say yes, and if they don't, they just don't say anything. um, but once again, I want to thank both Chaerb and Lucent for being here.
You're welcome.
And thank everybody for listening, and have a good night.
Night.
Bye.